All right. Good morning, everybody. See we're rolling now. All right. Let me just put the participants here. I can see who's on. All right. Today is Daf Tzadi Zayin Daf Tzadi Zayin in Masechah Shabbos. We left off yesterday with a discussion. It was a statement, I believe, by Rabbi Kiva regarding Tzlafchad. So he mentioned that Tzlafchad, he was one that he died in the Midbar. So he wanted to go ahead, and he said he was the Mekayshesh. He was the one who was Chai Misa. So they said, no, this Gzer Shav is no good. He shouldn't have said it anyway. So now the Gemara is going to make a similar statement. We are on the top, actually, first word of Tzadi Zayin Amar Aleph. Ve'ela ha Gamar Gzer Shava. So there's a Gzer Shava. So he said the Gzer Shava like Gamar. The Gzer Shava is not actually a learned. Gzer Shava is on his own. In other words, the Gzer Shava was by the Mekayshesh, right? It says Vayu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar, and so Ish. And then later on it says, Avinu meis b'midbar. So they wanted to go ahead and darshan, I guess the word b'midbar, to say that Tzlafchad. He says, no, you can't go ahead and darshan it for yourself for this reason, because either the Torah wanted to keep it hidden, or the fact that you're saying something that's not true, and therefore it's a genai. So Ela mehecha havi. So if that's the case, what happened to him? What happened to Tzlafchad? So it says no. So me'afilu havi, right? So he was from the afilu. It says over there when the pasuk says, I'm just reading from the side of the pasuk, says ve'afilu la'alois el rosh har v'aram bris Hashem Moshe la'mashim b'kerev ha'machane. So it says over there when they approached the mountain, and there were those that after the Meraglim came back and those upset, they tried to approach the mountain, and some were killed. So he was amongst those that Tzlafchad was amongst those that were killed. Now, new subject. So it says of this regarding Aaron and Miriam when they were speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And they said Lashon Hara about him. So it says, and Hashem got angry. Says Rabbi Kiva, not only did Miriam get saras, but also Aaron got. So Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Akiva ben kacha ata oisili tenas adin. He says, inevitably, either whether you're wrong or right, you're going to have to go ahead and answer for this drasha that you did. Why? In Kudarecha, if it's true as you're saying that Aaron did indeed get saras, hatar kisiv ata megalo. So, well, you're doing something wrong anyways, because the Torah tried to keep it hidden, didn't want to say beferish that Aaron got saras, and here you're darshaning and telling everyone that he did. If not, it's not true. If not, you're spreading rumors about the tzaddik Aaron HaKohen. So the Elo Haksiv Bum. So it says over there, right? Vayichar af Hashem Bum on them. And it sounds like even Aaron too. So it says Hahu ben Azifa. It was only like it was only wind. It was only it wasn't real anger that he was punished or with an actual punishment, but rather it was a temporary anger. Ben Azifa Bayalma. And Tanya command the Omar af Aaron Yitzar. We actually have a brayso that supports those that say, or Rabbi Akiva that said Aaron actually indeed did it at Saras. The pasuk says Vayifen Aaron al Miriam v'nei Saras, and it says over there, and Aaron turned to Miriam and she had. So what is the lashon of Vayifen? All right, so Tana Shepana Mitzaras means that he turned from his Saras, and he had Saras real quickly, and then it was healed, and then he turned to Miriam, and then she had Saras. So Omar Reish Lakish Hachayshed is similarly going in this vein. Hachayshed b'ksherim leike begufa. One who goes ahead and he's chayshed b'ksherim, right? He assumes the worst about somebody else, or he suspects someone who's innocent. So he's leike begufa. He gets punished with his body. The pasuk says, "V'hein le'yamin." The Moshe Rabbeinu says back to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, "Why I'm going to tell Bnei Yisrael to leave Mitzrayim? They're not going to believe me." So v'gali kamim kodesh abricha the B'hamnei Yisrael. However, Hakadosh Baruch Hu knew that Bnei Yisrael would believe him. So Amarlai, hey maminim, b'nei maminim, they're believers, the sons of believers. Ve'ata ein sovcha lahamid, right? But you, in the end, you're not going to believe. Hey maminim k'dechsiv, they believe. It says vayomer ha'am, right? It says they believed b'nei maminim, and then how do you know they're sons of b'nei maminim? It says v'aminim b'Hashem, that they believed in Hashem. So it says, since it says it twice, they were maminim b'nei maminim. And ata ain sefek lahamin, but you in the end, right? I know you won't go ahead and believe. Shinar, as the pasuk says, yan lo yamanti bi, right? What if they don't go ahead and listen to me? So you see, they weren't believing. We mind the luck. And how do we know that? We said, okay, so the punishment of Chayshid B'Ksherim, right? Because he said Bnei Yisrael are not believers, and he was wrong. So he was Chayshid B'Ksherim. He suspected those are innocent. So where do we see that one get punished is with his body? The pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem lo od havina yodcha b'chekecha." Right? He said, when you put your hand in your shirt and you take it out, that he had tsaras, that he had tsaras on his hand. So you see that he was punished on his body. And Amar Rabbi V'Temer Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Mido Toivim Meheres Lavo Midas Paranios. We see that a good deed is paid off quicker than something bad coming to happen. Where do you see that from? When it comes to Paranios, to punishing Kasiv Vayitziu V'Hine Yadam Mitzuras. Kashelik. It says when he took out his hand, he saw that it was full of tsaras. And that's when he got the leprosy, is when it came out. However, however, midah tova, in other words, to remove the tsaras, which is a midah tova, ksiv, it says over there, vayotziu mecheko, and he removed it mecheko. It adds the words mecheko, right, from his bosom, v'hinei shava kibsaro, and then it returned back to normal flesh. So mecheko, who the shava, it returned from while it was in his bosom, in his shirt, all right, kibsaro. In other words, that what do you see? It's when he got saras. It was only after he pulled out, then it became saras. But when it was healed, it was already healed while it was still in his shirt before he pulled it out. So we see that the good thing, i.e. the removing the midah tova, the removing the saras, goes faster than giving it saras. At that moment, I guess, when it was still in the shirt before it was pulled out. And finally, one last drush, and then Vayivla Mata Aaron is Mataisam, and Aaron, his staff, right, swallowed up the others. Some rebels are nace b'seich nace. So nace b'seich nace was a nace that in fact had turned to a snake. It was another nace that it went ahead and it swallowed up the what's called the other snakes. Fine. Now, actually, 1 second. Right, nace b'seich nace. 1 second. Right. No, it was after it became its staff, then it swallowed it up. No, that was the second miracle. It wasn't just turned to a snake, but even once it returned back, then it was chayzer, and it swallowed up the other staffs as it was a staff, and it was prior to it as a snake. Fine. Now, getting back to the inyan of Shabbos. So our Mishnah, we had a machlekes. Now, we had a machlekes back in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was from the first Mishnah of the new parak. On the bottom of Tzadi Vav and Aleph, just to review over there was a case of one who goes ahead and Meshusha Yachid, Reshusha Yachid, Reshusha Rav B'emtza. If there was one through from one Reshusha Yachid to another Reshusha Yachid, and there was a Reshusha Rabbim in the middle, okay, Rabbi Kiva Mechayev. Rabbi Kiva says one is Chayev and Chayim Paichim. Chayim say you're Pater. Right? That was the normal way. So now we're going to get into this machlokes. Let's see. Boy. Where are the two dots? What? All right. So, boy, Rabba, what was it? Is that me? I guess it was me. All right.
Whose phone is beeping or something's beeping?
You guys hear it?
I heard it, yeah.
I don't know. All right. I think we're good.
Play through.
All right. Let's see. We'll play it through. Let's go. So, boy, Rabba. So, right here, now we're talking about when from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah, and it goes through the Rosh Hashanah. So the question is, which way did it traverse through the Rosh Hashanah, right? At what height compared to the ground? So, boy, is it Lamata Me'asara Pligi? Do we say that it was under 10 Tfachim? Is the argument Vahab Pligi? And this is Machlekes. Damar Sarad Amrinan Kluta Kamashu Nacha. One holds, in other words, the first opinion holds a Yerchai because anything that is within the 10 is considered like it's gathered by the ground, and therefore, since it's within 10 tefachim of the ground, it's like it's on the ground. And the other one opinion holds that no, that just because it traveled in the air, it doesn't mean it's considered is considered to be landing on the ground, continuously. But if it was above 10 tefachim, everyone holds as pater. And therefore you have to say we don't learn throwing from Moshit. Moshit is handing over, right? As we learned earlier, right? They used to, when they would carry the crushim, they would pass over the crushim from one of the wagons to the other, it would be above the height of 10 tefachim. Remember, 10 tefachim is not too tall. 10 tefachim is only approximately 40 inches, right? So it's like 3.5 feet. So they would carry the crushim higher than 3.5 feet. So we see that was the malacha done. So in other words, but it's only handing, it's not throwing. So therefore, maybe everyone would agree that throwing is not like handing, and therefore, if you threw something above 40 inches across the Rishus Harabim, you would be pater. Everyone would agree. Or perhaps or maybe even above 10 tefachim, right? 40 inches is pligi is machlokes. So pligi, here's machlokes. The Mar Saviyafin and Zargim Moshe. One holds that just like it's forbidden, just like they did in the Mishkan, you can't pass one to the other. So too, we learn from there that you can't throw even also above 10 tefachim, just like you can't hand over 10 tefachim. Umar Saviyafin, that one says no, we don't learn Zargim Moshe. We don't learn throwing from Moshe. It's two different things. One is handing, the other is throwing. Aval lamata me'asar, but according to this second halach, anything below the height of 10 tefachim, divrei kol chayiv, everyone will hold to your chayiv. My time, what's the reason? Kluta kama shonacha damya, right? Because something which is within the airspace of 10 tefachim is considered like it's on the ground. Therefore, if I threw something from Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid through the Rishus HaRabim, it's like it was on the ground of the Rishus HaRabim, and therefore I'll be chayiv for removing it from my Rishus HaYachid into the Rishus HaRabim. So let's see, which one is it? Omar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef gives the first teretz. Ha milsa iboile l'Rav Chizda. This question was asked to Rav Chizda. Upashta, and he answered nilei Rav Hamnuna ma, and he answered to Rav Hamnuna meha from here. Rishus hayachid l'Rishus hayachid v'ayim Rishus harabim. What about this case, right? From Rishus hayachid to Rishus hayachid, and it goes to Rishus harabim. Excuse me, the ayver b'Rishus harabim atzma, right? Says this brisa, right? It goes through the Rishus harabim atzma. Right? What is this atzma? Rabbi Kiva Machai. Rabbi Kiva says chayiv in such a case. Chachamim say pater. Right? Now, midikal ma'b'Rishus harabim atzma, by the fact it says the word atzma, right? The etzem in the real part of the Rishus harabim, and in the actual Rishus harabim, like my kids say, actually, right? So it went actually in the Rishus harabim, right? Pshito l'malam yasar plegi. It's obvious. We said, if it was above 10 tefachim, it wouldn't say the word atzma. But the fact is within 10 tefachim of the ground, that's the Rishus harabim itself, right? Because above 10 is makom p'tur, right? Uvamai, and what's like uvamai? Ilim v'maver. If we're talking about v'maver l'matim yasara, if we're talking about passing from one to the other, hudamechayev. So ilim v'maver l'matim yasara l'mechayev. If it just means that below 10 tefachim, that's when you're chayev. L'malam yasara lo mechayev. But above 10, you wouldn't be chai for throwing. V'hamar Rabbi Elazar hamaiti mashri l'mala me'asar chai shechein masa b'nei kos. Right? If one goes ahead and he removes something and it's above 10 the whole time, he is chai. Because what do we see over there? We see from the way that the b'nei kos, they used to go ahead and carry the different kalim. Right? They would carry it on their shoulders. On their shoulders is above 10 tefachim. It's above 40 inches. Right? So therefore, and they carried it. So obviously, we can't be saying that everyone above is pater. So must be, right, even something, because that you're chayiv for, we see you're chayiv for. So rather, elav, it must not be talking about, right, carrying, because we know handing from one to the other is above 10 is good. So what's the case of above 10 it's no good? Elav, bezarik. It must be a case of bezarik, of this price over here is dealing with throwing and not handing. And it must be only below 10, that's when you're chayiv. However, and above 10, you would not be chayiv, because that's not considered, that we don't learn from Zorik. And Shmamina, Kluta Kamashunacha Pligi Shmamina. Must learn from here that according to this opinion, the way he answers, since he learned other Rishus Harabim Ba'atzma, right? Therefore, the machlokes is only within 0 to 10 tefachim. But if you throw above 10 tefachim, according to this teretz, one would be pater, because we don't learn throwing from handing off. And this explanation of the machlokes between Rabbi Huda and the Chamim in our Mishnah is Upligi argues with Rabbi Elazar, with Rabbi Elazar. Dama Rabbi Elazar Mechayv Hay Rabbi Kiva Afilu Lamala Me'asara. That which Rabbi Kiva, and I think as before I said Rabbi Huda and Chamim, I meant Rabbi Kiva, right? Rabbi Kiva, he will be Mechayev even above 10 for throwing. Why? It says Rishus Harabim Atzma. It sounds like in the Rishus Harabim, which is 10 tefachim to the ground. To tell you even the strength of the Rabbanan, that even if it's between 0 and 10 tefachim in the public way, that you're still pater, right? Because they hold that it's not considered to be landed on the ground. And actually, this argues with Chilkiah Bar Tuvi. The Amar of Chilkiah Bar Tuvi, Toich Shleisha Divrei hakol chayiv. So now, till now, we had only either below 10 tefachim or above 10 tefachim. Now, we're going to add a new distance, right? Taich shalosha. What about within 3 tefachim of the ground? So there's 0 to 3, 3 to 10, and 10 and above. So he says, Taich shalosha divrei hakol chayiv. Everyone agrees if it's from 0 to 3 tefachim to the ground, and that's the way the ball or whatever was tossed traveled. So everyone holds is chayiv. If it's because it's considered to be on the ground if it's that close. If it's above 10 tefachim, divrei kol pater, everyone holds your pater because we don't find throwing in the Mishkan. The only thing that was done in the Mishkan over 10 was handing off. So l'malam yasar divrei kol pater, and megimel v'ad asara banu machlokes Rabbi Kiva v'Rabbanan, and between 3 and 10 tefachim, that's the machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan. And Tanya Mehalch is similar to learn b'soich gimel. Divrei hakol chayiv. Within 3, everyone agrees you're chayiv. L'malam yasar above 10, ein elo mashum shvus. That's only aser midrabanan. It's not aser deraisa. Everyone agrees that you're pater from a chatas. However, it says over there, if the both of those areas, right, the both private domains belong to him. Mutter mi gimel v'ad asara. Right, and if it was of his, right, and if those both areas were his, then it'd be mutter for him to throw it from one to the other. That it travels, if it goes over 10, and he owns houses on both sides, and he throws it from his house to his other house, right? You don't need any sort of. The issue is or erev chatzer, right? Erev chatzeros can carry one from another. It's a derabanan. But if I own both, I don't need a erev chatzeros because I own both houses. So therefore, that case would be mutter. And megimel ve'adasara, but between 3 and 10, that's the machlokes. Rabbi Kiva mechayiv, v'chaim pater. Rabbi Kiva says you're chayiv, the chaim say you're pater. Now, Omer Mar. Now let's see what we just mentioned. Omer Mar, im hayu reshuyos shalo mutter. If he owned houses on both sides, he owned them both, and he wanted to throw from one to the other, and it traveled above 10 tefachim. It was in the air of 10 tefachim. It's mutter to do. You don't need any sort of eruv. Because he owns them both, and it's not in the Rosh Hashanah because it's above 10, so it's mutter. So leimatu tiyufta the Rav. Let's say it's a kash and Rav. Ditamar shnei batim shnei tzidi Rosh Hashanah. If there's 2 houses on 2 sides of Rosh Hashanah. Now this Gemara is this brisa, or we're going to assume this brisa is talking about it's owned by the same person. Why is that? Let's see. And Rav bar Rav Huna Amar Rav Asr lizrok mizeh mizeh. It's asr to throw from one to the other. Right? So if you own the same house, this is different than we just said. Before we said if you own both houses, you're supposed to do. And this over here says Rabbi Rav Huna in the name of Rav. It's asr lizrok mizeh mizeh. And when Shmuel Omar, mutter lizrok mizeh, it's mutter to do. Now, obviously, we must be talking about it's owned by the same person. Because if it was owned by 2 different people, everybody would hold your chayiv. You can't throw from one house to one rishus to the other. You need an erev chatzeros, right? There is no erev chatzeros, so it'd be asr to do. So by the fact that Shmuel says it's mutter, it must be we're talking about it's owned by the same person. If it's owned by the same person, so Rav said it's asr to do. What do you mean? I thought we just said before that it's mutter to do. So it's a kash and Rav. So Lav miokina da'ai kigoin demile chad umatis chad. Right? No, maybe over here we're talking about a case of where one is higher up than the other, and therefore if you throw from one to the other, it might fall down into the Rishus Harabim, and therefore one will come to do an Isser. So it's not necessarily that it's Asr. Really, if it went one to the other, it's not a problem. But we don't want people to do it because it might come fall, and therefore people, the Zimni Nafil, the Asr Lisui, and people, it might fall, and people will come to go ahead and carry it, and therefore that'll be a problem. So Amar Le Rav Chizda Rav Hamnuna says Rav Chizda to Rav Hamnuna. V'Amridan, some say Rav Hamnuna Rav Chizda. Rav Hamnuna said to Rav Chizda. Minaha Milsa the Amar Rabbanan. Where do we know that the Rabbanan said Kol Pachos Megimel Kilavu Dami? Anything that was within 3, 0 to 3 is like lavud, right? Lavud is basically halacha we have that anything within 3, it's like it's connected. Right, we see. Actually, we're going to bring it in the case we see it by Sukkah, right? We see it by Shabbos. So different things. If it's within 3 tefachim, it's like magically considered to be connected. It's close enough. So where do we see that 0 to 3 is considered to be like on the ground? It's just a rabbim. Because it's impossible for the ground to be all level. So if the ground is not level, So therefore, there's holes and bumps in it. So therefore, anything within 3 is like it's on the ground. It's all considered to be part of the ground because sometimes the ground will go a little higher. So if the ball is a little higher off the ground, that means it's part of the ground. Just like in some areas, the ground is a little higher. So since the public way is not flat, so therefore, anything within 3 is considered to be on the floor. If that's the case, Gimel Nami, what about exactly 3? Why just less than 3? Why don't you say 3 exactly? So, and furthermore, Hadatnan, that which you learn in Meseches Sukkah, Hamashal Devarim Milamala, Lamata. If one goes ahead and he hangs walls, so the walls are hanging from on top, you have like a cord going across, and there's a wall hanging down, right? If it's 3 tvachim between the ground and the wall, it's no good. It's too much space there because it's actually 3, right? It's 3 or more. But if it's less, if it's 2.5, then kshera, then it's considered like there's a wall there. It's not considered to be partitioned anymore, and it's considered to be a wall there. If there's a wall there, it's kosher. So what do you see over there? So why is there a difference, right? According to you, 3 should be the same as less than 3, right? If the ground is not straight, so why do you cut it off at less than 3? What about 3? What's the big difference? So Gemara says no. First, we're pushing off that shaila. Over there, there's a halacha when it comes to walls. Right? When it comes to walls by sukkah, by a special law by sukkah, we don't want it to be that, let's say, an animal, a young goat, can go walk underneath it. So that is the amount of, if it's 3, then a young goat can get through. If a young goat can get through, that's not a good wall, right? Wall wants to be able to separate it. So Gemara says, fine. So tinach lamata lamala. Okay, fine. So this is okay. 3 is still an acceptable number, and it has to be less than 3 when it comes to the ground to the bottom of the wall. However, lamala ma'ika lamemar. But what about above it? In other words, we also see the Masechah Sukkah, right? The Gemara doesn't bring it down. Rashi brings a couple of examples. For instance, let's say a person puts up rope, right? Puts up rope here and here and here. As long as there's less than 3 tvachim between all 3 of them, or between all the ropes, it's considered to be like a wall because we close up the space of anything less than 3. Now over there, it's not a halacha of an animal walking through because animal only walks on the ground, but animal won't be walking between the height of 3 tefachim and 6 tefachim, right? We don't care about a gdi going through. So obviously this number of less than 3 still applies, even not from the ground to the bottom of the wall, but even higher than that, right? So what do we say over there? So Ella, rather, here comes the punchline. Kol pachais mishleisha kalavadami hilchasa gemirila. Anything that is less than 3 tefachim is considered to be enclosed and connected is a halacha l'moshe misinai. So lavud is a halacha l'moshe misinai, and nothing to do with the ground being even is the halacha l'moshe misinai, that anything that is within 3 is considered to be like it's connected, and therefore anything within 3 tefachim of the ground is really considered to be like it's on the ground. Tana Rabbanan. All right, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan. Now, opposite case, all right? You're throwing from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah, and you have a Rosh Hashanah be'emsa, and you have the Rosh Hashanah is in between it. So Rebbe Mechayiv, Rebbe says you're chayiv because when I go ahead and throw from one Rosh Hashanah to one Rosh Hashanah and travels through a Rosh Hashanah, so therefore, since it's traveling with the Rosh Hashanah in between, it goes from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, which is forbidden. And Rebbe says chayiv, and Rav Shmuel Dar Tavayu loichayev Rebbe ela b'Rosh Hashanah mikura. First of all, that which we say that the Rosh Hashanah it travels through Rosh Hashanah, it's only a roofed Rosh Hashanah. It's covered, and now since it's covered, therefore it's like it's in that space. But if it was uncovered, it was just let's say a private yard, and he threw it from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah, it would not Rebbe would not say chayiv. Right? Because we say over there, it's like it's a house that's filled, and therefore, since it's like a full house, therefore it's like landed in the house. Aval, Shena Makura, but if it was not roofed, then lo, you would not be chayiv. And now it says the second statement, which we're going to go ahead and discuss. And Amar Rav Chanam, Rav Huda, Amar Shmuel, Mechayiv Hoya Rabbi Shtayim. He actually is chayiv twice. Now, remember, if I'm throwing from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah through a Rosh Hashanah, so therefore, I should be, says Shmuel, right? That according to Rabbi Chayiv twice, right? One for for it going from the Rishus Harabim that I'm in into the Rishus HaYachid. That would be one. And the second one is as it's passing in the air from the Rishus HaYachid into the next Rishus Harabim. That's two, right? So basically bringing in to the Rishus HaYachid the first time and then taking out from the Rishus HaYachid the second time. So achas mishum hotzah, one is from taking out, ve'achas mishum hachnasa, the other one is bringing in. So Yosef Rav Chana v'kol kashle, so Rav Chana was learning this and he had a kasha. So Lamemra, turn the page, Demechayev Rebbe Atolad v'makom av. Now we learned earlier, if you recall, that we wanted to define hotzah and hachnasa, right, as one is bringing in. Now we always talk about in terms of the person being inside a house. Right? A person being inside a house. So a person is inside a house. So he is taking out. So hotzah is the av, right? The av malachos we learn over there that the hotzah taking out is considered to be something that is the av malacha, because the Torah says don't take out. In other words, don't take it out. Don't bring it in from your homes anymore and bring it to the mishkan. All right. And the tolada is bringing in, right? Because that wasn't said specifically. That was a tolada. Right? So now it sounds over here, if you're chayiv both for hotzah and achnasa, right? It sounds like you're chayiv both for the av malacha and the tolada. So the name of the chayiv Rebbe ad tolada makom av, you're going to be chayiv if you perform both, right? V'atani we learned a brayso, and we were talking about this yesterday. Rebbe Aimer dvarim hadvarim. He darshans the word dvarim when he gathers Bnei Yisrael and he says elu. He tells them elu hadvarim, and he talks about Shabbos. So he says dvarim hadvarim. So elu hadvarim, elu lamates malacha. Says elu hadvarim. We darshan in terms of dvarim hadvarim adds 3. Then we had ela. The gematria is 36 plus 3 because dvarim hadvarim, right? Plural and extra plural, right? So we get to 39. So we see it's 39 malachas. Shenemar l'Moshe b'Sinai, only 39 and not any extra, right? So how can you be mechayev more than the avos malachas? So Amar le Rav Yosef, Mar Masnin lo v'kashile. You're right. According to the way you learn that we're talking when he says you're chayiv twice, in this case, you're chayiv both for Haknasa and Yitzia, which is a Talad of Makom Av. And according to that, it's shver. It's very difficult to understand why you'd be chayiv for both a Talada when you're also chayiv for that Av Malacha, for that, right? Because the Av is the category. You can't be chayiv for the subcategory while you're also chayiv for the category. So you learned his statement on this and Vikashile and Akasha. Vikashile the Rebbe had the Rebbe, and he had a contradiction on Rebbe. However, Anan ad Rabbi Yehuda masnisan v'loy kashilan. Actually, we had this statement actually in another case, in a different brayso, and it wasn't difficult to us. The Tanya we learned in a brayso. It says over there, Meshus hayachid l'reshus harabim. If one goes ahead and tosses something from a reshus hayachid into a reshus harabim, the over arba amos reshus harabim. So imagine this: you're in your house and you throw something into the street. But that which you threw in the street, right? You threw a baseball mitt, okay? You threw a baseball mitt, and instead of it landing right in the beginning of the Rishus Harabim, it lands 4 amos into the Rishus Harabim. So it says over there, Rishus Harabim, Rabbi Yehuda Mechayev Chayim Pachim. Rabbi Yehuda says you're Chayev, and the Chayim say you're Pater. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Mechayev Haya, and this Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel says Mechayev Haya Rabbi Yehuda Shtayim. You're Chayev twice here for throwing the baseball mitt from your house 4 hours into the Rishus Harabim. Why? Achas mishum hotzah. One is from taking from my house into the Rishus Harabim. That's one isser. And the second isser is v'achas mishum havara. And the other one is carrying. You're not allowed to go ahead and carry, right? You can't carry something daled amos Rishus Harabim. So you're chayav for 2 things. One, from taking it inside the house to the street, and the second one, traveling with it 4 amos in the street. Now, these and if you're saying no, according to Rebbe, he only chayiv once. So michlal, that which the Rabbanan say, the Rabbanan and Patri Lagami, they say you're pater completely. So how could you be pater completely if you throw a baseball mitt, right, into the Dalet Amos into the street? Obviously, we're talking about, it must be that Rebbe says you're pater. He only means you're pater from 2, but you're still chayiv for 1, for taking out from one to the other. So Gemara says, no, mimai. Maybe it's different. That which Rabbi Yehuda says you're chayiv, you're only chayiv 1. The mechayiv. The Rabbanan pater legamri. The Rabbanan say you're pater legamri. And you're going to ask me before, how could you say it's pater legamri? The heichem mishkachas la kagon de'amar ad nafkolish zarabim tanuach. Maybe he says, I'm going to throw this baseball glove. Now, this baseball glove, according to Rabbanan, I want it to land right at the edge, at the beginning of the Rishus Harabim. All right, right at the beginning of the street, that's where I want the glove to be. And he throws it, and it doesn't land there. It lands 4 amos after that. Now, here's the machlekes. Rabbi Huda savar amrin kluta kamashunacha v'sablei mechashvaso. According to Rabbi Huda, while it's in the air, it's considered like it's also on the ground. So therefore, even though it's on the air, right, it's considered to be on the ground. So his intentions were to take it out right in the beginning of the Shus Rabbim, and once it travels over the beginning, the front of the street, it's like it landed exactly where I wanted it. I wanted it at the beginning of the street, and since it traveled over that area, it's like it landed right as I wanted. And since I did the malacha as I intended to do, therefore I'm chayiv. The Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan will hold that though. Lo amrin kluta kamashunacha. No, they hold that no. If just because something is traveling in the air, it does not mean that it is actually in the it lands on the ground. And therefore, he did not do his machshava. His machshava was for it to land right in the beginning of the street, but it landed 4 amos afterwards. So since the work that I did was not the work that I intended to do, therefore, I should be putter. So maybe that's machlokes there. Fine. But over here, according to this, there's no problem with saying that a talad of makom av, you wouldn't be chayiv. You wouldn't be chayiv too. So now it goes about talad of makom av loy mechayiv Rabbi Yehuda, right? So he says, and that which he says that he wouldn't be chayiv for, but this, you wouldn't be chayiv for a tolada in a place where you did the av malacha, right? So you wouldn't be chayiv. So Gemara says, no, lo yisakadais. You wouldn't think that. The Tani, when Rabbi Yehuda, maisif af hashayvet veha medaktik. So when dealing with these 39 malachas, there's a discussion as to which 39. So Rabbi Yehuda is maisif. He adds on shayvei medaktik. Both of these are part of the weaving process, which we'll get to in later prakim. One is to go ahead and line them up. That is the malacha of shayvei, and the other is basically medaktik, is beating the threads and make sure they're nice and taut and ready to go. So Amrlo, Shovet, so he says, no, they're not 2 extra ones. Shovet Hareu Kebachal Mesach. All right, Shovet, to go ahead and line them up, is really part of Mesach. And Medaktek Hareu Bechal Orig. And Medaktek is also part of Orig, is part of that. So the weaving itself is basically thinning out the strings there. So my love Davina B'Tarvai B'Hadei Adadi, right? Isn't now that we're talking about we do them all at the same time and they're included in the others. So Shmami Namachayev Haya Rabbi Yehuda Talav B'Makomav. And we see that he says, no, you're chayiv for these, according to, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda adds them. So Rabbi Yehuda argues, right? And he says that you're also chayiv for these. So is it not a talad of b'makomav? So he says, no, mimai. Maybe we're talking about each one is different. Rabbi Yehuda, right? A talad b'makomav lo mechayiv. And really, Rabbi Yehuda says, you do it separately, and you're not chayiv a talad when you're chayiv the av. Everyone agrees that you're not chayiv talad the av. The Rabbi Yehuda, the reason, so why does he hold your chayiv over there if you do the other malachas there? Right? Rabbi Yehuda savar hani avos ninu, and the Rabbanan savar hani tolados ninu. That Rabbi Yehuda holds, and no, these are actually the part 2 of the 39 malachas, and therefore you have to go ahead and rearrange, right, your number of 39. And according to Rabbanan, they hold that these are only tolados; these are subcategories of the surim of Mesach and the surim of Oreg. And Teda, and I actually have a proof for that. Why? The Tani says that Rabbi Yehuda Maisif. It says over there the lashon is Rabbi Yehuda Maisif, right? He's not talking about where it's subcategory. He's Maisif, which means to add, right? So if you're saying, what does it mean Maisif? He's adding. These are also malachas. These are additional from the avos malachas. Ella yamart talados my Maisif. But if you say these are talados, a person's chai for these, so you don't add, right? When if we're talking about talados, you don't add it. And similarly learn, Rabbi Yisrael Tavayu lo yichiv Rabbi Yehuda ela achas. He only chayiv in one case if one goes ahead and throws it from his house into Dalat Amos, into further in the street. He's only chayiv one, and he's not chayiv for 2, but he's only chayiv for doing one and taking out from his house into the Rosh Hashanah. Now, Amar lei Ravina Ravashi ulamai desalek adaisa meikara. What was the havmin in the beginning? The Mechayiv Hoy Rabbi Yehuda Shtaim. The Rabbi Yehuda thought you could be Chayiv 2. I understand, right? Because take out from your house into the front of the street, and then from the front of the street, Dalat Amos. Now, why do you Chayiv twice? If he intended to be in the front of the street, then he never had intention of the back of the street, and therefore he should be Pater because those were intentions. And if he wanted the back of the street, so he didn't want in the front of the street, so why would he be Chayiv? So maybe Tarnum place it says, okay, he threw it, and wherever I wanted to land, that's where my intentions are. So therefore, since it did both, it left his house into the street, and from the street it went Dal Ramos, therefore it'd be chayiv too. So the Gemara says, another case, Pshita niskavin. We're just going to get to the two dots, 2 lines from the bottom. So Pshita nizak niskavin nizak shmona v'zarak arba harei kosav shem shimon. If one goes ahead and his intention to throw something 8 amos, right? He throws a ball 8 amos, and it only travels 4. Right? It's no different than a person who is going to write the name Shimon, right? Which starts with a shin mem, and he stops after mem. That spells out the word shame. You're not allowed to write any words. Shame is a word, and therefore you be chayiv. Even if you started with the intentions of writing Shimon, then you stopped after the mem because you wrote the word shame. So same thing over here. You throw it 8, and it only goes 4. You're chayiv. So what about a case of niskav and nizok arba v'zok shmona mahu? What about if he intended to throw 4 and it went 8? So what's halacha there? Do we say that Lamaisa it went 4, it went at least 4, it went 8, or do we say that no, right? Or do we say no? I wanted to go 4, and since it did not do as I planned, therefore I should be pater from bringing a chatas. So v'lav hainu damer lei Ravina Lavashi, right? What we said before, right? That we answered up earlier that the person says, okay, wherever it lands, it's going to land. But Lamaisa, if a person doesn't do his intentions, whether it goes longer or shorter, according to Ravina, right, one would be pater because you're pater because it did not do your intentions. Your intentions were for it to go 8 or 4 in this case, and it went 8. So it didn't do your intentions. You should be pater. So he says, no, you can't learn from that case. And you're right. We answered over there, and we said that, no, it's talking about a case of wherever it's going to land, and therefore, even wherever it's going to land, he'd still be pater in such a case. If you say, and even that which we said in the beginning, that if I intended to throw it 8 and it went 4, so it did at least part of it that I intended to do, right? And now, just like when I write the word Shimon and I stop after shame, I'm chayiv for that. So how can you compare? How could you compare the two? You can't write the name Shimon without writing shame. You have to start shin mem. So obviously, you're going to, that's part of your intentions is to write shame, right? Shame with a couple letters afterwards. So therefore, that case, you're chayiv. However, right? When I throw 8, it doesn't stop at 4 and then goes additional, right? It lands at 8. It doesn't. I don't need 4 for 8. Just because it passes that, it doesn't mean it lands there. So therefore, if it lands there, it's a completely different action. When I write Shimon, right? So I have to write the word shame. But when I throw something 8 amos, it doesn't have to go 4 amos and then goes 4 amos again. It's just one travel. So therefore, you can't compare the two. And really, you can say that maybe in this case, one throws 8 and he wanted to throw 8 and it threw it 4, or wanted to throw 4 and he threw it 8. Therefore, he would be putter because he's not fulfilling his intentions of his throw. All right, we'll stop here. The 2 dots. All right, it was a little long today, but Mitzvah Shem tomorrow. I didn't even. All right, it looks like a little shorter. Mitzvah Shem will continue.
Shkach.
Everybody, have a good day.